Hi there! Now, in the process of a composition or improvisation, you most likely want to create the mood and expression you had in mind, right? Now, besides rhythm, style and guitar sounds, the choice of a scale or mode plays an important role within that process. And one of the very obvious things you can do is to exploit the sound of the scale or mode is to use it for creating riffs or melody lines. But often you may find yourself narrowed down in a melodical sense by playing scale patterns up and down the neck to create the thing you are looking for. Well, scale arpeggios can do wonders in such a case. This can really open up the melody or riff and provide you with sounds and possibilities that you wouldn't have had with just the scale itself. Now, besides all of this, scale arpeggios are a great way to explore the sound of a scale in a mix of melody and harmony, and it is a great technical study tool as well. So plenty of reasons to get familiar with scale arpeggios. Now, most of the times we learn to play the scale and separate from that we learn the chords within the scale. We use the chords for progressions and we use the scale for improvisation or composing riffs. Now, one step further, we would learn the characteristics of the scale and use this to emphasize the essence of the scale. But you have to understand that there are different ways to capture the sound, mood and character of a scale. And I don't say it's better, it's just a different approach, producing different sounds and possibilities. Now, instead of using the scale in a linear way, we could also play the scale in chord arpeggios. And we would preferably use chord arpeggios that define the characteristics of a scale. This technique would be far more melodic and captures the harmonization of a scale in 2 or 3 arpeggios. Now, take for instance the Lydian mode that is characterized by the major 3rd, major 7th and augmented 4th degree. Now, playing the arpeggios of the first 2 chords in this scale would instantly capture the major and Lydian character of the scale. This idea we're going to use to create so-called scale arpeggios. And how that works, we'll see in the next chapters. Now, in the next examples I will use the Lydian scale, and that has a good reason. It has everything to do with so-called void notes. Now, I will elaborate on this later on in the video, but for now just go with it and you'll see it becomes clear in one of the next chapters. So if we take a good look at the C Lydian scale with the notes C, D, E, F sharp, G, A and B, we'll see that the tonic of this scale is a major triad built from stacking 2 third intervals. Now we could stack another third interval to create a major 7 chord. This is the undisputed tonic of the Lydian mode. Adding yet another third interval on top of this major 7 chord, we'll get a major 9 chord. Now the chord consists of no less than 5 notes. And still we can add more third intervals on top of this major 9 chord. Now we could add the F sharp to create a major 9 sharp 11 chord. And we could add the last third interval, the note A, to create a major 9 sharp 11 13 chord. Now if we take a closer look, we'll see that the 7 different notes in this stack of thirds make up the major 7 sharp 11 chord. And those are all notes from the C Lydian scale. In other words, the Lydian scale can be caught in a major 13 sharp 11 arpeggio. Now this is what we call a scale arpeggio. So now we know that a scale arpeggio is in fact a 13 chord. It's a triad with all possible extensions within the key or mode. Now the 13 chord should always be built from only notes that belong to the particular scale or mode. In this Lydian 13 arpeggio, we'll find the triads of the 7 degrees of the C Lydian scale, like C major, E minor, G major, B minor, D major, F sharp diminished, and the A minor triad. Now next we're going to learn about the patterns of the scale arpeggios. We will still use the Lydian scale as an example. Other scales will follow soon. Now the first pattern starts on the root on the 6th string and looks like this. And over the tonic major 7th chord it sounds like this. The second pattern starts also on the 6th string, but has a different approach, like this. The stretching is somewhat wider and it feels different. These are the same notes, so the sound is almost equal to the previous pattern. Now the third pattern has a root on the 5th string and is therefore a different fingering. It looks like this, and it sounds like this. The fourth pattern has a root on the 5th string and again has a little bit of a stretch. The notes are the same as in pattern 3 and it sounds like this. Until now the scale arpeggio started on the root or the tonic, depending how you approach it, because the scale has a tonic and a chord has a root, and these names are often confused. Anyway, the pattern did start on the first note of the scale. Now this makes that the first notes of the scale arpeggio are notes of the tonic. In the case of our example in C Lydian scale, the first notes of the scale arpeggio are the root, the 3rd, the 5th and the 7th degree. So the arpeggio starts with chord tones and ends with color tones. Now we could change this by starting on the 2nd note of the scale. And now we start with color tones and end with chord tones. It's important though that you keep track of the tonal center of the scale or mode, because without context, starting the C Lydian scale on the note D results in a D Mixolydian scale. Now, this shouldn't be a problem when the progression you are playing over is obvious C Lydian progression. But if this is not the case, then better start with the tonic C and move on with the scale arpeggio starting on the 2nd note of the scale, the note D. Now, both variants, starting on the tonic or starting on the 2nd degree, have a unique sound. Now, every scale or mode has an avoid note. Well, not every scale, but most of them. An avoid note is a note in the scale that sounds a bit weird and off and sometimes even dissonant. This is because this note clashes with a note of the tonic chord of the scale. In C major scale, for instance, the 4th degree F is a note that doesn't feel right as a landing tone, because the note F clashes with the 3rd E and creates a very dissonant tritone interval with the major 7 B. Now you can hear this note wants to resolve to another note, and quickly too. And exactly this is what we do when we are improvising. If we find ourselves in the unfortunate position of hitting such an awkward note, we just play the next one in the scale and we're off the hook. And remember, always keep smiling. To avoid this effect when playing a scale arpeggio, you could play an extra scale tone before or after the avoid note. For instance, E, F, or F, G, or even E, F, G. Now when playing faster, the sound doesn't suffer so much from the avoid note and you can get away with it more easily. Here's an overview of the avoid notes in the modes of the major scale. So every mode, including the parent scale, has an avoid note, except for one scale, and that's the Lydian scale. Now you know why I started with a Lydian mode. Sneaky, right? In this part of the video, I'll show you the patterns for all the In this part of the video, I'll show you the patterns for all the other modes. Now I'll show you 4 patterns for each mode and I'll play one of these patterns so you can hear the sound. The Ionian mode is the major scale and the parent of the modes of the major scale. The obvious tonic of this scale is a major 7th chord, but also a major 9 and major 13 chord could be used as a tonic. Now here's an example of a C major scale arpeggio over the C major 7th chord in a major chord progression. Now the Dorian mode is the 2nd mode of the major scale and sounds sad but hopeful. It's a minor scale with a natural 6th degree. The typical tonic of this mode is a minor 7 chord, minor 6 or minor 7 13 chord. Now here's an example of a Dorian scale arpeggio over a C minor 7 13 chord family. The Phrygian mode is the 3rd mode of the major scale and is one of the darker modes. The scale is a minor scale with a minor second degree, or a flat 9th degree if you like. The tonic of this mode is a minor 7 chord or a sus4 flat 9 chord. Here's an example of the Phrygian scale arpeggio played over the C minor 7 chord that is alternated with a D flat and B flat minor chord. Now the Lydian mode is the 4th mode and the brightest of all modes. It's a major scale with an augmented 4th degree that is responsible for the bright sound. It has also a dreamy quality to it. Now the tonic of this mode is either a major 7 chord or a major 7 sharp 11 chord. Here's an example of a Lydian scale arpeggio over a C Lydian vamp. Now the 5th mode of the major scale is a Mixolydian scale. This is a major scale that is characterized by the minor 7th degree. The scale is a darker version of the major scale. The obvious tonic of this mode is a dominant 7 or dominant 9 chord. Now here's an example of a Mixolydian scale arpeggio over the C dominant 7 chord in a Mixolydian chord sequence. The 6th mode of the major scale is the relative minor scale, the Aeolian mode, better known as the natural minor scale. The tonic of the Aeolian mode is a minor 7 chord. Now here's an example of a dramatic Aeolian scale arpeggio played over the C minor 7 and C sus2 chord. The 7th and last mode of the major scale, the Locrian mode, is an awkward sounding mode because of its tonic and the structure of the scale. It's a minor scale with a diminished 5th and minor 2nd degree. The tonic of this mode is a half diminished chord, the minor 7 flat 5 chord. Now here's an example of the Locrian scale arpeggio over the C minor 7 flat 5 chord that functions as a 2 chord in a 2-5-1 in B flat minor. Now you could practice these scale arpeggios in many ways to improve your technique, train your ears and learn the patterns by heart, of course. The most obvious way to practice is playing the arpeggios separate from each other, for instance over a single chord backing track. Now when you are familiar with this, you can chain the scale arpeggios of a particular scale over the neck. And after this you could use a progression and play over the different chords with different arpeggios. So let's say you have a progression like this: E minor 7, C major 7, A minor 7 and B7. Then you would play the E minor scale arpeggio up, the C Lydian scale arpeggio down, the A Dorian scale arpeggio up, and the B Mixolydian scale arpeggio down to end on the tonic, the note E. Now just try to come up with variations of this idea yourself. I mean, by exploring new ideas, you're studying the concept in a very efficient way. Now we looked at the major scale and its modes to highlight the concept of scale arpeggios. Now of course we can project the scale arpeggio technique on other scales too, for instance on the non-diatonic harmonic minor scale or melodic minor scale. Now the peculiar structure of the A harmonic minor scale looks like this. Now you could play a scale arpeggio of the A harmonic minor scale, and the pattern would look like this. could play this, for instance, over the 5 chord in the key of A minor, the E dominant 7 chord. What about this beautiful A melodic minor scale arpeggio over a minor 6 chord? Now we can also make an altered sound with the scale arpeggio. The outside sounding G sharp altered scale is in fact the A melodic minor scale played over a G sharp dominant 7 chord. So playing the A melodic minor scale arpeggio over the G sharp 7 or G sharp 7 sharp 5 chord results in an altered sound. To get this to work, we have to start on the note G sharp of the A harmonic minor scale, because this is the root of the G sharp dominant 7 chord. So we start the A harmonic minor scale arpeggio on the major 7th degree. Now, another very special scale is the whole tone scale that can be used over augmented chords like the dominant 7 sharp 5 chord. The whole tone scale is built from only whole tone intervals, and the tonic is a dominant 7 sharp 5 chord. The scale arpeggio consists only of major third intervals. So there's plenty of possibilities to use this technique in different ways that result in some beautiful sounds. Now, the character and mood of a scale can best be heard if we play the chords within the scale, rather than just playing the scale up and down. Now, a scale arpeggio is one of the techniques to do that, because in the scale arpeggio all notes of the scale are present. And besides this, we have seen that this creates very wide and melodic lines. Now, the result is a 13 arpeggio containing the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, the 11th and the 13th. And in some patterns of the scale arpeggio you find all the triads of the scale. And that's pretty amazing, and the reason for this rich sound this arpeggio produces. Now we can create scale arpeggios not only from the modes of the major scale, but for every scale that is built from thirds. So I hope you can use this concept and make it your own. I'd like to see you in a next video. Bye!